I'm joined now by retired Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell. So, Sean Bell, this is also echoing something that President Putin has talked about as well, isn't it? Expanding Russia's army. How concerning is that?
Yeah, we've always pore over Putin's speeches very carefully. He's cancelled a couple most recently, largely because he seems very worried about the sort of questions he might get asked. But this was an MOD, Ministry of Defence event in Moscow yesterday, where he was primarily talking to his generals, but there was also a few speeches providing support for the military, anything they needed, and it seemed to be more focused on a domestic audience. But the rhetoric within that speech was absolutely about a maximalist approach. It was not about just taking the Donetsk. It was about subjugating Ukraine more widely and absolutely blaming the West and NATO for this action. The worrying part of the speech was that the announcement really that he's planning to change defence policy, which was about increasing the size of the contracted army, their professional core of their army, from about 380,000 to just short of 700,000 soldiers, but also their armed forces from just over 1 million to 1.5 million, about a 40% increase in size. The justification, again, was the threat from NATO. Interesting, Russia is in a recession at the moment, so the more money you put into defence, the less money you've got for domestic issues, which runs a real risk for Putin of undermining his support domestically. But what Russia's clearly doing is building the foundations for a much more robust military in the future. Also, he's mobilising Russian industry to be able to generate the tanks, the equipment that goes with that. And, of course, all of this presents an increased threat to the West because our defence assumptions are going to have to change as a result of that. And inevitably, that will have implications for defence spending.
Well, yeah, so that's his ambition. How practical is it in the short term to build up the numbers in your army?
Yes, I mean, our worry at the moment is what effect will this have on the Ukraine war? The harsh reality is that it costs a great deal of money to put a 40% increase, and it also takes a lot of time. You can't just generate this equipment overnight. You can't just nip down to the shops and buy a few more tanks. You have to mobilise industry to get it sorted, clothing, ammunition, just recruiting people and training them. So we're talking about years, not weeks, and it's very unlikely to have any impact in the near term on the war itself. But what is quite clear is where Putin's intent is for the future, and therefore he's trying to buy himself time, because the longer he can pause, the longer he's got, he can generate this military capability and also erode the support of the West as they go on. So in the near term, as Putin tries to generate this time, he may seek to negotiate, but almost certainly without any intent at all. And what's really interesting, the pressures on Putin, he's doing military training across in Belarus at the moment. Well, Belarus used to be a very junior partner, but as we're seeing some of the Russian forces here in Belarus, yet Russia's becoming increasingly reliant on Belarus. It's becoming reliant on Iran for providing military missiles and for the drones, and likewise on China and India for some of the purchasing and some of the oil. So it just shows the increasing importance on the diplomatic side that the West needs to be unified to try to isolate Russia in that global community.
OK, Sean Bell, very interesting. Thanks very much indeed.